At number 10 we have QUAKE. QUAKE is originally a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. and is a decent hero himself, but he doesn't bring much to the table for the Avengers. One of her most notable contributions to the team is helping them take down the Phoenix Force, which is sort of a team effort more than anything. And her biggest task even in that battle is when she interrogates the X-Men. The main issue is that often Daisy Johnson, aka QUAKE, is better as a spy and a police agent than as a hero. She does have powers, but she spends more time interrogating people and doing more traditional police work than high-level superhero work. Something that also seems a little counterproductive is that she is announced to the public as being part of the Avengers, sort of killing her anonymity as a special agent. This leaves her with a target on her back as a covert spy, and without her spy work, she doesn't really have the power set to really keep up with the other members of the Avengers. Although, let's be honest, the standards for the Avengers are pretty high, and if you can find a way to stand out, you're lucky. QUAKE had a way to stand out as the covert spy on the team, but this was cut short by this announcement by Captain America. Even if I'm over exaggerating the significance of that event though, she still just doesn't make a huge impact on the team, even as an undercover agent. At number 9 is Quasar. This hero is sort of like the Marvel equivalent to DC's Green Lantern, to the point where many people see him as a blatant ripoff. Starting off as a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, Wendell Elvis Vaughn comes across a set of power bands which he uses to gain superpowers and become designated as the protector of the universe. Where this character falls flat is simply in the way that he seems to waste his potential. His powers allow him to traverse the cosmos and extend the bandwidth of the Avengers into an intergalactic context. Although Thor does that a little bit, he could definitely have helped. But he doesn't really take advantage of these supreme abilities as much as he could. I mean, he's the protector of the universe. You'd think that his story would break some more ground and offer the Avengers a more exciting addition to their already enormous bandwidth of power, but he doesn't. These days, the Guardians of the Galaxy seem to be filling the Avengers' quotas for cosmic exploration and protection, which leaves Quasar feeling a little irrelevant. Maybe not a bad hero on his own, but he's criminally underdeveloped and a little bland considering the extent of his powers. At number 8 is Mantis. Mantis is also very powerful, but she doesn't really do much for the Avengers while she's part of the team. After officially joining the West Coast Avengers, she helps them take down Voice, which is basically the extent of her work with them before that version of her is killed. And what seems to be a theme with Mantis is getting other teams of superheroes to help her complete her own personal quests, like the time when she gets the West Coast Avengers to help get to the bottom of her issues during the Fragmented Mind storyline, or another time when she gets the Fantastic Four to help her figure out some other personal issues. She does some pretty heavy lifting in the Thanos War storyline, actually facing him one-on-one, ending up in a tie, but she's not officially an Avenger at that point. She also seems to stir up a lot of drama within the Avengers, getting caught in a bit of a love triangle with Swordsman and Vision. She's definitely not the worst of the Avengers, but she doesn't do much to help them during her short time with the membership. Besides, it's the West Coast Avengers. They're not really the most powerful or impactful iteration of the team either way. Don't kill me in the comments if you disagree, it's just what I'm gauging from the online conversation. At number 7 we have Ex Nihilo and Abyss. This pair of strange aliens actually join the Avengers at one point, and it's a really strange addition to the team to say the least. Since they joined at the same time during the Infinity storyline, I figured I'd put them in the same entry here. These two aliens have so much power that where they really fail to make an impact is by not exploring these powers very much. This seems to be a theme in this second part, just heroes who have tons of power that they're never given the chance to use for whatever reasons. It also seems that these two extraterrestrials have their own cosmic destinies already planned out for them, and neither have much to do with the Avengers or any of their goals. My best guess is that writers included them in a moment when it made sense, but then after a while realized that they were too overpowered or not grounded enough as characters to serve the Avengers properly. Because looking back on them now, it's pretty apparent to fans online that they were never really fitting for the Avengers in the first place. At number 6 we have Red Hulk. Another sort of pointless copy of an already established Avenger. Red Hulk just doesn't bring anything new to the table when he joins, and his attitude is just sort of unlikable at times. I know the Hulk isn't really known for his attitude either, but there's something about General Thaddeus Ross that doesn't really sit right. He's sort of like a stuck-up army general who doesn't know how to turn off his critical edge and be a team player. Well, actually it's not sort of like that, he's just like that. That's exactly what he is. Although when he turns into the Hulk, he does keep his rational thinking mind, which gives him a slight edge over the Hulk, who basically has a one-track mind to destroy everything in his path. But as good as this sounds, it sort of acts as a lesson to the Avengers, in that even though the Hulk can be a lot at times, having a rational tactical mind inside the beast can also cause problems, because in the case of General Thaddeus Ross, his tactical mind isn't the most cooperative or friendly when getting things done, and he just seems to put everyone off with his approach to collaboration. But he's still pretty strong, so we can't get too carried away here. After all, attitude isn't the only thing that should be considered when ranking the Avengers. But even then, when looking at his abilities, he's not much of a standout member of the team either. No matter which way you look at it, he's still just a different colored Hulk. They've already got a green one. At number 5 is Rage. This guy holds the accolade of being the youngest to ever join the Avengers, but not much else. And this wasn't by design. Rage's powers were acquired by an exposure to toxic waste, which actually gives him the body of a full-grown man, even though he's only 13 in reality. So when he joins the Avengers, he does it under false pretenses, fooling even Captain America into thinking he is a suitable age for the team. And even though they do give Spider-Man a membership to the team, he's always been known as an exception to this no teenagers rule. The protocol is typically to keep the team consisting of physically and mentally mature heroes who can handle extremely high stakes situations without issue. And unfortunately, Rage's failure to do that is what makes him one of the worst Avengers. He just shows a pretty immature disposition, and it sort of overshadows his abilities as a hero. And failing to hide this immaturity, he also finds himself on the outs of the Avengers a bit earlier than he may have hoped. Not in the most gracious fashion either. Captain America basically catches on and fires him off the team once he realizes that somewhere deep down, he's just a mere middle schooler. At number 4, we have Deathcry. This character has a very short run with the Avengers and doesn't really make a mark on the team in any significant way. What puts her so high on the list is that she actually forces her way onto the Avengers in a way that infuriates the other team members. Although part of me thinks this makes sense, since she's a Shi'ar warrior who is actually commanded by the Empress to protect and ultimately join the Avengers. The only misstep here is that this isn't really her call to make. At least the part where she joins them, for 2 reasons. Firstly, because she too is a teenager, and that's a no-no for the Avengers, as discussed before. And secondly, because it's one thing to try and protect the Avengers, but getting an official membership takes a bit more than some altruistic bodyguarding. When she's first rejected by the team, she stays persistent and eventually sort of forces her way onto the team instead. But this doesn't last long, as she's incinerated by Captain Universe, who doesn't even really mean to kill her in the first place. It's sort of her fault, realistically. She comes at him in one of her trademark berserker rages just because he takes a kill that she wanted for herself. So in self-defense, he raises a big ball of energy and she kind of just flies into it and just explodes. Not the most gracious ending to an Avengers member, capping off an equally ungracious lifespan. At number 3 is Thunderstrike, another knockoff character, except this guy is a knockoff of Thor, who just doesn't find his footing with the Avengers. This is probably because of how similar he is to the already extremely popular hero when he's introduced in the late 80s. But this isn't a coincidence. Eric Masterson, aka Thunderstrike, first appears in Thor 391 and actually has a quick run as Thor before he's demoted to Thunderstrike. And even though he still remains relatively powerful, his influence just plateaus as soon as he's left to exist in the shadow of the much more popular Thor. And not to mention, his costume, it's just pretty weak. He looks like an aging biker who only shops at thrift stores. It might just be the case that Thunderstrike is meant to be a bit more of a relatable version of Thor that people could see themselves in, but after he joins the Avengers, it proves that he really has no distinct qualities that set him apart from the rest of the team. No offense to him though. It's tough when you're a carbon copy of the God of Thunder just with a worse outfit. Might just be bad luck. Or bad writing. More likely the second one. At number 2 is Gilgamesh, or the Forgotten One, and the second name is fitting because he really just doesn't do anything of substance for the team. He joins in issue number 300 of Avengers when the team is in the process of reforming. So I'm gonna chalk this up to a misstep in the writing process. My theory is that the writers thought that Gilgamesh would be a little bit more popular than he turns out to be, although I don't know how that would be possible as well considering his costume, which, just like the previous entry, it's quite understandably known as one of the more boring and downright ugly costumes out of anyone on the Avengers. But besides that, his attitude is also known to be pretty arrogant and a little too proud. For instance, he often refers to himself as being in the higher ranks of the ageless Eternals, and although he is immortal, you don't really go around pimping yourself like that. He has a lot of potential as a superhero for the team, but that's all the more reason that Avengers fans have been disappointed in his weak and somewhat unlikable influence on the team. Finally, at number 1, we have Triathlon, aka 3D Man. I was sad to have to do 3D Man dirty and put him at number 1 because I actually love this character, mainly because of how silly it is that he's based on the color palette of a pair of early 2000s 3D sunglasses, and how even sillier it is that his powers really have nothing to do with 3D anything. All these setbacks are the reason why I love this character, but I knew he had to make it onto the list if we made a part 2, so here he is. And apparently a lot of people online agree that he's one of the all-time worst Avengers, so there was no better spot to honor him than at number 1. Originally joining the Secret Avengers, Captain America makes 3D Man a member of the Initiative and puts him on the Hawaii team, which is self-explanatory. It's basically a team in charge of keeping watch over issues that take place in and around the state of Hawaii. And no diss to Hawaii, but there isn't much that goes on over there in the Marvel Universe, at least during 3D Man's run. One of his more notable acts as an Avenger is when he captures Scarlet Witch during the Axis storyline and brings her to a machine, Doctor Doom, in an effort to take her abilities. But he sort of drops the ball in this moment of glory and she escapes. Look, 3D Man isn't that bad. He's just a weird superhero that just doesn't really make much sense, and the banality of his abilities sort of equate to his lack of usefulness as an Avenger at the end of the day. What can I say? At number 10, we have SANDMAN. Although his redemption arc is really great and has so much potential, it sort of falls flat. Basically, the Thing one day sits SANDMAN down and tries to turn him to the good side, and it works. With SANDMAN now finding his stride as a hero, he first joins the Outlaws, a team of reformed Spider-Man enemies, and is then given a membership to the Avengers. It's all going in the right direction for the former villain until he's promptly hypnotized by Wizard and turned back to the dark side. Honestly, this isn't even SANDMAN's fault, but his quick turn back to evil gets in the way of him being anything close to a functional member of the Avengers. I almost didn't even put him on the list just because he barely even does anything for the team after he's inducted. And even tragically after that, he even goes off to reform the Sinister Six right after leaving the Avengers Reserve, which basically erases any good he may have done during his time as an Avenger. At number 9, we have Justice, FKA Marvel Boy. Although he's known as a pretty well-respected hero, at least in his later years, Justice still doesn't do much for the Avengers during his time with them. When he first joins, he comes off as more of a fan than anything else, making some rookie mistakes right off the bat. He also finds a way to break his leg, which isn't very common for a superhero. Much of his lack of maturity in the group is due to his worship for the other members of the Avengers, so it's hard to blame him, although he does do some pretty good work in planning to take down Ultron. Later, he ends up teaching for the Avengers Academy alongside Hank Pym, Tigra, Quicksilver, and Speedball. But overall, this character's time with the Avengers is wrought with scattered accomplishments and distracting love triangle storylines that just make him a much less effective member of the team. At number 8 is Sentry, who joins the Mighty Avengers after having one foot in the door of the New Avengers for a while. This guy is a poor addition to the team simply based on issues of power imbalance and, unfortunately, his own mental health. On the power side of things, he's so powerful that he sort of drowns out the efforts of the Avengers as a team, which in many ways is a good problem to have. But on top of this, due to his mental health issues, he tends to have trouble reining in his power set and often second guesses himself. I feel badly for the Sentry, and I only put him on this list because sometimes people just aren't right for a big team. When it becomes clear that Sentry is fighting some internal battles, he is still known as the most powerful member of the team, but just needs to figure himself out first. For example, at one point, Sentry attacks Ultron at a moment when the team needed him to hold back, and sort of ruins the whole plan. Although the attack was in retaliation for Ultron seemingly killing his wife, so it's not that unexpected. It's just one of the many times that Sentry has troubles keeping his composure and taking on the responsibilities of an Avenger. He's not a bad hero, just maybe not right for the best superhero alliance ever created. At number 7 we have US Agent, or John Walker. Formerly a stand-in for Captain America, his true colors show when Steve Rogers returns and Walker is renamed US Agent, which is just a bunko name if you ask me. I had to put him on the list even though he does the honorable deed of taking over as Captain America when Steve Rogers goes AWOL and becomes Nomad. He's just a little too intense on the patriotism front and brings the team down as a result. A huge part of Steve Rogers' influence on the Avengers is his ability to shelve the burden of America's unofficial but basically official superhero and keep his intentions focused on acting in favor of others. He's able to put aside his pride and work for the team, whereas Walker does the opposite. He does work for the team, but it's a big lesson in the importance of good attitude because they have the same powers, but something about John Walker's suffocating patriotism and inherent arrogance that comes with it just proves that no one could do the job like Steve could. And once again, US Agent is just such a lame name to take on, unrelated. Especially after having gone as Captain America for a time, it's just, maybe I just feel badly for him in a way. At number 6 we have Swordsman. With the biggest accolade being that he trains Hawkeye, it's hard not to squeeze this guy onto the list. Basically, Swordsman starts off as a circus performer who is known for demonstrating his mastery with bladed weaponry. He was more of a showman than a superhero realistically, and also more of a villain than a superhero if we're being honest. After losing all his money due to his gambling addiction, he decides to steal from the carnival paymaster, and when a young Hawkeye chases him, Swordsman almost kills his own apprentice. And then, fast forwarding, the way that he's eventually admitted into the Avengers is basically through fraud. He teams up with Mandarin and sends a fake message posing as Iron Man to the Avengers to allow himself into the group. And it works. Being a double agent for Mandarin, he later lures the Avengers into a bomb with the intention of blowing them up. Although he does try to dismantle it in a moment of regret, he's still dejected from the Avengers anyway. I think they just sense he was screwing around with them. He then basically just falls back into a life of crime while picking up a drinking habit along the way, which isn't part of the reason I put him on the list. This is kind of sad. He's a very troubled character and just had some nasty intentions and tendencies. Not the most noble of the Avengers by any means. At number 5 we have Jack of Hearts. This guy is notoriously one of the worst Avengers because his most notable act as part of the team is murdering another one of the members. Although he does this while under the influence of Scarlet Witch, there's no hiding from something so brutal. I mean, the Avenger he kills is Ant-Man, who's a really important member of the team. Aside from this though, Jack of Hearts also just spends such a short time with the Avengers that even his heroic deeds are sort of weak, regardless of the tragedy. Being the 52nd member of the Avengers, he's brought on specifically to help take on Kang the Conqueror. They all team up with the Justice League and a huge battle goes down. And then promptly after this, Jack tragically decides he needs to end his own life for various reasons, taking a villain with him who had killed Ant-Man's daughter. But it's pretty ironic that the next time he makes an appearance, he blows himself up and takes Ant-Man with him. Just a messy run as an Avenger through and through. At number 4 we have Stingray. This guy isn't ever really a true member of the Avengers. He is officially, but he only seems to jump on as part of the group when they need him, like when they need access to his underwater HYDRA base or when an inverted Doctor Doom brings him on to rescue civilians from a river. He's sort of their fringe friend that they use for water related issues. Could this be a case of lazy writing? Perhaps. But it seems more like he's not really a strong enough character to do much more than pop in and out of the scene when water gets involved. He also almost fights Iron Man due to a misunderstanding right when he joins the team, and even campaigns to have him removed from the Avengers, which is just an awful way to start. At number 3 is StarFox. This guy is just a bad hero. He's not even really a hero. His powers are extremely problematic in that he can basically gain the love of a woman on command. But it's not really love because it's artificial and it only lasts for so long. So when he uses his powers, these women often wake up not knowing where they are or what they've done, which is naturally a pretty deplorable thing to inflict on a person with your powers. And he doesn't even seem to feel badly after it either. He just gets his clothes on and jumps out the window like, "See you later, good luck piecing together the last 12 hours. Otherwise known as Eros of Titan, this guy is actually Thanos' older brother, so this sort of explains the evil nature of his powers. At least in the comics they're kind of aware of his nasty nature, because the woman who he's used his powers on eventually come out and sue him because of what he does, which has to be a first for a superhero. I'm honestly just surprised that this dude even had a membership to the Avengers in the first place. He just kind of sucks. At number 2 is D-Man, or Demolition Man. This dude should never really have been brought on to join the Avengers. He's sort of just this unmotivated, scraggly guy with a horribly designed suit. He just steals Wolverine's and Daredevil's costumes and makes a tragic mashup of the two. His origins are that he's basically a wrestler that was given superhuman strength before befriending Captain America. When Cap needs to reform the Avengers, he thinks it's a good idea to bring on D-Man to join the team. But this choice is pretty obviously out of sympathy for the guy because he doesn't really do much when he does join. He's then sort of left behind and lost in time, becoming more and more unmotivated as the years go on, eventually living in homelessness before becoming a sort of villain. Not the best track record for even an alum of the Avengers. But I can't totally rag on him. The Avengers have insanely high standards and some people just want to hang out and eat sub sandwiches. So that's D-Man. The number 1 spot on this list goes to Dr. Druid. Having been trained under the same mentor who trained Doctor Strange, you'd think this guy would have gone on to be a great member of the Avengers. Well, at first he wasn't actually known as such a bad hero by his own right, but after joining the team, it becomes pretty obvious that he wasn't destined for greatness. His attitude is arrogant, he carries a lot of insecurity about living in Strange's shadow for so long, and he also has a big weakness to the charm of women, proving him to have a pretty low emotional intelligence. And this is a pretty major fault when you're supposed to be an Avenger because you need to be able to have a strong character regardless of whatever your power set is. This also tends to lead him to be a subordinate to women in positions of power like Captain Marvel, who he continually undermines until his disloyalty leads to her being seriously injured in battle. He then tries to convince everyone to name him the successor as the new chairman. This guy, Dr. Druid, was just kind of a weak-minded fool who was conniving and subordinate through and through. It's surprising he was ever brought on board with the Avengers because he really proves himself to be one of their weakest links while he's there.
Number 10, Civil War I. Oh boy, the first Civil War caused a great uproar and a good deal of problems in the superhero community. It also made Earth vulnerable to attack as it evidently involved just infighting. When superheroes turn on each other, that's bad. When two main superheroes who are part of the same team turn on each other, that's ridiculous. And that's exactly what happened with Civil War I. While the inciting incident that divided heroes wasn't caused by Iron Man or Captain America, and actually was pretty serious, they both had become leaders of two different approaches for how to best resolve that main issue. Iron Man believed that superhuman beings needed a shorter and tighter leash basically, and should work with the government so they could kind of be overseen. Number 9. Axis. Axis was an event where we saw heroes and villains sort of do kind of like a role reversal. This happened as a result of a spell backfiring, cast by, well, you probably guessed it, none other than Scarlet Witch. Wanda, for being a powerful magic user, has kind of a challenging time with magic. Although to be fair, she actually wasn't the only caster involved here, although she is the one that we often talk about. Doctor Strange started casting with her, and when he got taken out, Doctor Doom actually helped in his stead. So Doom is also possibly to blame as well, even though Wanda usually takes a lot of the flack for this one. What launched the Axis event was Wanda and Doom attempting to cast this spell on the evolved and supremely powerful version of Red Skull, Red Onslaught, which sort of came about when Magneto was like, I know how to fix this, I'll kill you, and then Red Onslaught happened, so it didn't work out so great. The spell actually succeeded, but kind of backfired in that many other heroes and villains within a certain radius also got hit with the spell unintentionally. Oops. And friends, if you are loving what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, may I recommend that you check out our latest channel, Most Amazing Top 10 Anime. Number 8, Hydra Cap. Hydra Cap is definitely a pretty bad thing that happened for the Avengers in, well, in many regards. One, Hydra Captain America is literally another version of Captain America who for a while we actually thought was the main continuity version for real. So we're not off to a great start with that. Number 2, the Avengers failed to stop Hydra Supreme Cap from taking over the US. Number 3, some of the Avengers were even manipulated into joining Hydra and Hydra Cap's forces. Some of them were actually like possessed and some of them were just kind of made to do so. All around, it was just a rough time and not a great look for the Avengers overall. I'm actually surprised there isn't more pushback from the public today as a result of this one. Number 7, Iron Man joins Kang. Yeesh, the crossing. What a weird crossover event. Every time I think I'm over it, we come up with a list topic where I kind of can't help but like return to it. In this event, Iron Man, one of the main Avengers, was revealed to be secretly one of the baddest of the bad, as we learned that Iron Man had actually been working for Kang, or rather Kang's Immortus version, for years. That's right, it turns out that Iron Man is actually a sleeper agent for Kang, or he was. He kind of still is, because he kind of got reconciled into one being, but it's still the old Iron Man. Anyways, as weird as it sounds, this was actually an even worse weirdness than Captain America working for Hydra in my mind. At least that made more sense to me. Iron Man would fight against the Avengers, and when they struggled to defeat him, they called in a past version of himself for him to beat and almost kill. Number 6, Final Fight. When the Earth was threatened by incursions during the events of Time Runs Out, what did the Avengers do? Save the day? Try to stop those incursions? Not exactly. Captain America had once been a member of the Illuminati, the secret group of heroes who banded together to resolve ideally all of Earth's problems without anyone actually even knowing. A group of superpowered intellectual, philosophical, and moral geniuses. At least that's what they thought. When the incursions were discovered to be a threat, and the majority of the group felt that it was important to consider the possibility that they'd maybe need to destroy other worlds to sort of save themselves from it, Captain America fought vehemently against that idea. As such, his mind was wiped and he was decidedly ejected from the group. When he regained his memories, rather than use the Avengers to fight against the incursions and find a way to stop them, he actually spent the last bit of time before the multiverse was to end hunting down the Illuminati and in a toe-to-toe battle with Iron Man. Number 5, create the Illuminati. Sometimes it only takes one Avenger to mess up everything for all of us. And that's kind of what happened when Tony Stark, aka Iron Man of the Avengers, decided to bring together the secret superhero group known as the Illuminati. Like I said, this wasn't the combined effort of the Avengers, but when you think about the Avengers now and even before, Tony has been a staple of that team for a very long time. And the Illuminati was really his genius idea. His genius idea. The Illuminati as a group have definitely caused more trouble than they're worth, causing a lot more problems in the cosmos than they've actually solved. Playing a key role in the end of the multiverse during Time Runs Out when they couldn't save the world, helping to cause Secret Invasion and World War Hulk as well. So yeah. Number 4, Civil War II. Even worse by far than Civil War I was its follow-up, Civil War II. In this story, we got more infighting, but for less logical reasons. This time, it was Iron Man versus Captain Marvel, because I guess Iron Man just really needs to like duke it out with all the captains. This one is one we can also likely more blame on the behind the scenes, as Marvel was definitely aiming to capitalize on Civil War I's success with this follow-up, but it just didn't work out too well because Civil War II didn't really make a lot of sense for most readers. But in terms of the canon, Carol, I think, was hands down to blame here for just being, well, unreasonably aggressive on the matter that was up for debate. Whether or not to let Inhuman Ulysses, a precog, predict the future and then based on those predictions stop future criminals from committing future crimes before of course they even happen. Yeah, and I say that as a Captain Marvel fan. I'm a big Carol Danvers fan, but this one was pretty one-sided in my mind. Even I am like, I think Carol was wrong and Tony was right. And I don't say that very often. Number 3, Avengers Disassembled. Avengers Disassembled was a story arc where the Avengers essentially imploded. What had really happened was Wanda had learned of the secret being kept from her, that she'd had fake children, which she'd in essence kinda made, who had been taken from her and then wiped from her mind by Agatha Harkness. Now, Wanda didn't like that too much, and in essence turned against Agatha, killing her before turning on her friends and colleagues, causing them to lose control, attack one another, and sicking reality warped versions basically of like Vision and get Avengers on them. Not only did the Avengers hurt one another, but they were made to do so by one of their own, and likely were even somewhat responsible for Wanda getting to a point where she decided to turn on them. So really, who's to blame here? Is it Wanda or is it the Avengers? Or is it kind of everybody? Number 2, ignoring Scarlet Witch. Avengers Disassembled was bad, but likely what was worse was that it kind of could all have been avoided if the rest of the team had simply, I don't know, cared more about their teammate and friend, Wanda. Scarlet Witch had a lot happen to her, and although this is of course superhero comics where every day that you're alive there's a threat of trauma or, of the world ending, or both, there had been many signs that Wanda was not in a good place. Rather than do something about it or, attempt to, I don't know, get her help, mainly the Avengers just went on as though everything was fine. I mean, I know they all each have a lot individually going on, but come on guys, if you have someone with reality warping powers on your team and they are using those powers to create fake children which then disappear without a trace after they also lose their life partner thanks to them basically being taken apart, mind wiped, and rebuilt as a blank slate without emotion, you might think to offer them some help or, at least check in to see like if they need anything, if they need a hug or a conversation. I'm not blaming them for what Wanda did, but I would at least like to hold them accountable for being pretty much awful friends to her in her time of need. Number 1, no more mutants. Probably one of the worst things that at least one of the Avengers did was to threaten all of the mutant kind's existence with just, a few words. Although admittedly, this wasn't so much Wanda's fault as it was Marvel's, who of course needed some reason to get rid of mutants for a bit because, they'd sold the rights away and they weren't really profiting as much from comics involving mutants at that time, and they simply had too many of them. But reasoning behind the story aside, during House of M, Wanda in the end struck out at all mutants because her father, she felt, was more obsessed with fighting for mutant rights than he was with his actual own flesh and blood family. Although we'd later learn that Scarlet Witch and her brother Quicksilver weren't even really like flesh and blood family. To begin with, part of the reason that Wanda suffered the mental break, which caused House of M and later M Day, had to do with the fact that her friends and Avengers didn't seem to notice or perhaps care that Wanda was suffering as a result of losing her children. And in fact, let us not forget that Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, of the Avengers, was also the one who even caused Wanda to remember her kids to begin with. She kinda spilled those beans. So whose fault was M Day really in the end? It was still Wanda's. Wanda was the one that said the words, so it's still her fault. But Janet was there.